I didn't come to Thailand to fall in love. I came because I was running out of reasons to stay where I was. 30 years in climate-controlled offices had left me with a neat resume and a life that felt like an empty spreadsheet, clean rows, no stories. I told people I wanted warmth, cheaper rent, a slower pace. The truth was simpler and uglier. I wanted to feel something again. The first breath of Bangkok hit like opening an oven. Diesel, durian, incense, and rain-steamed concrete wrong and right at the same time. I took a taxi south, with the aircon rattling like a sick dog, watching the city dissolve into palms and billboards and then the flat green of rice fields. Every mile away from my old life felt like a debt being forgiven. I rented a place near the water, 1 bedroom, salt-bitten stucco, a porch that faced a stubbornly blue sea. Morning came with long-tailed boats and dogs arguing on the beach. Nights were cicadas and the slow churn of ceiling fans. I learned to measure time by tides and the market's opening bells. I learned that coffee here tasted like burnt sugar and that if you smiled, most problems softened at the edges. I told myself I'd be disciplined. I set a budget in a neat little notebook. Rent, visa runs, groceries, a line item called adventures. I cooked rice and eggs, ate papaya like medicine, and ran the same loop along the water until my knees complained. I wanted to get healthy, get quiet, get small enough to hear whatever voice was still left in me after all the years of pretending. But you don't come to the tropics to get smaller. The sun refuses it. The colors are loud. The markets shove abundance in your hands. Mangoes with meat like butter, fish silver as coins, chilies humming with heat. Strangers call you brother, and before you know it, you're staying for one more beer, then one more song, then one more month. The country hugs you with both arms and whispers, "Stay." I kept telling myself this was temporary. A season, a reset, a year at most. I said it like a prayer to keep from admitting how badly I wanted it to be permanent. Back home, I had a condo and a car I barely drove, and a calendar that looked busy enough to pass for a life. Here, I had a scooter held together with faith and zip ties, a shelf of paperbacks traded and retraded by other men who had washed up before me, and a circle of acquaintances whose names I learned first in nicknames: Kiwi, Uncle Dave, Professor, Big Mike. We talked about exchange rates and visas, and where to find a decent mechanic. We didn't talk about what we'd left. In the afternoons, I'd sit on the porch with a sweating glass and watch the waves pretend to be endless. Boats would pulse along the horizon like heartbeat lines. Sometimes, storms rolled in with theater, curtains of gray, towers of thunder, the beach emptied with a collective, practiced shrug. The rain would pass, and the sunlight would drape everything in gold as if nothing bad could live here. That's the first trick paradise plays, making you think consequences can't swim. I told myself I wasn't lonely. I had routines. I had the gym with its cracked mirrors and fans that only moved hot air from one corner to another. I had the night market where I could count on the old woman to press a grilled skewer into my hand and laugh when I fumbled the chili. I had the beach bar where the bartender learned my order and called me boss in a way that felt less like flattery and more like a private joke between survivors. I had all the props of a life. But loneliness doesn't care about props. It's patient. It sits quietly on the far end of the couch and waits. It lets you make your lists and cook your eggs and congratulate yourself for being sensible. Then one night, the power flickers, the fan slows, and in the sudden hush you hear it breathing beside you. The men I met had stories they told with an easy grin, divorce settlements that had set them free, jobs that had gone remote, families back home who were supportive. The stories were gloss, like the lacquer on a carved elephant, shiny enough to look like truth if you didn't scratch it. When the gloss wore thin, you could see the same grain in all of us, a long hunger for softness, for being seen, for being called by a name that wasn't on a company badge. I thought I was different because I had rules. No relationships, no rescuing, no promises. Keep the heart out of it. Say hello, say thank you, say goodnight. I wrote those rules on the first page of my notebook like a contract with myself, because I knew how fast hope could spend a man's savings, because I'd heard the warnings and told myself I was immune to stories that only happened to other people. Late one evening, the sea was a sheet of black glass, and the beach bar was all warm bulbs and wooden stools. A guitarist, with a voice like rain, did his best with old ballads, and a couple danced barefoot in the sand, moving as if they'd rehearsed the world. I was 2 sips into a beer when the power dropped, one of those quick island outages, and the bar fell into dark except for the glow of phones and a lighter's brief flame. People laughed. Someone whooped. When the lights came back, she was standing at the end of the counter, laughing too. I noticed her the way you notice. A breeze after a long, still day, first as relief, then as something you've been craving, without knowing it. Not flashy, not fishing for attention. A white blouse gone soft with washing, hair pulled back, eyes that met yours and stayed there a second longer than habit. She said something to the bartender in Thai, voice low, then looked at me because I was looking at her. I lifted my glass. She lifted her water. It was nothing. It was the beginning of everything. I paid my tab and told myself to go home. The rules, remember? But the guitarist slid into another song, and the bartender, who had learned my cycles, set down another beer I hadn't asked for. The stool beside me stayed empty until it didn't. "You stay here long time?" she asked, accent turning the sentence into something kinder. I said I was new enough to still get lost and old enough not to mind. She laughed, and the sound reached for a part of me I'd left wrapped in bubble wrap years ago. We talked like people do when they don't yet know which parts of themselves to hide. Where I was from, where she was from. The town near Isan her mother missed. The brother who'd gone to Bangkok to drive for a delivery app. The stray dog that had adopted the bar and balked at motorcycles like it had a grudge. Small things that felt big because they were shared. When the bar closed, she walked out with a group of staff, shoulders relaxed, steps unhurried. She didn't look back. I told myself that was good. It meant I could keep my rules without the universe having to intervene. I rode home with the ocean on my left, the road wide and empty, my reflection jumping in and out of the scooter's cracked mirror. The fan in my room whirred a lullaby. The notebook on the table waited, open to the page with the rules. I lay awake, listening to the surf-arranged stones. Somewhere down the beach, a dog barked twice and surrendered. A gecko made its small machine sound in the corner. I told myself the feeling in my chest was simple jet lag, sugar, the heat. I told myself today was a good day, and tomorrow I would go to the market early and maybe take the ferry to the next town and keep to myself. I said the words like a spell. Morning brought light like mercy and the ordinary work of living. Laundry, a leaky faucet, a trip to the hardware stall where the owner insisted I take an extra washer for luck. I ate rice porridge under a lazy fan and watched a boy chase a kite shaped like a swallow. The day folded itself neatly until evening asked its usual question. Beach bar or early night? I told myself just one. Just to hear the guitarist again. Just to nod at the bartender and prove I could be the kind of man who keeps his distance. The sky flared orange, then bled into blue. The bulbs along the bar hummed awake. And when I stepped onto the sand, when the music drifted out and the sea answered with a soft hush, she was there again, counting change, her brow creased in concentration, eyes lifting as if she'd known I'd come back. "Same drink?" she asked, and something in the way she said it felt like being remembered. That's the second trick. Paradise plays you think you're choosing, but mostly you're following a path laid down by every hungry heart that arrived before you. I took the stool. I took the drink. I took the risk without admitting I'd just picked it up. And somewhere beyond the glow of the bulbs, the tide turned in the dark, not caring about rules written in notebooks. Her name was Nira. She told me that later, when we were already half a bottle deep into the kind of night that feels endless. The name fit her soft at the edges, but sharp where it mattered. At first, she was just a face in a crowded beach town, a polite smile when she brought drinks, a wave across the street. But Thailand has a way of shrinking the distance between strangers. You start seeing the same faces at the same hours, and before long it feels like destiny when it's really just repetition. One evening, it rained the way it only rains in the tropics, thick, relentless, biblical. The kind of rain that floods alleys in minutes and makes the ocean look like it's rising to swallow the land. Everyone ran for cover, and I ducked beneath the bar's bamboo awning. She was there, wringing out her hair, laughing. "Bad luck," she said. "Maybe good luck," I replied. "Now I don't have to drink alone." She laughed again, a sound that broke through the rain. And just like that, something started. We talked until the rain thinned to a whisper. She told me she'd grown up in a small village in the Northeast, sent money home to help her mother, and dreamed of opening a little cafe someday, something quiet, away from bars and drunk tourists. I told her about the life I'd left behind, the years of gray cubicles and colder winters, how I'd sold everything to find peace. She looked at me for a long time, then said, "Maybe you come here to find love, not peace." I laughed it off. But her words stayed with me. After that night, she started showing up more often. Sometimes she'd stop by after her shift with 2 beers and no agenda. Sometimes I'd see her at the market, pretending it was coincidence. Eventually, it wasn't coincidence anymore. She had this way of making the ordinary feel like a secret. A walk through the night market turned into a story. A bowl of noodles became an adventure. She'd tease me for using chopsticks too slowly, for sweating through my shirt in the heat, for calling her Miss Nira like I was in a business meeting. "You too polite," she'd say. "You make love sound like paperwork." I didn't have an answer for that. The first time she came to my house, it was because her scooter broke down near my street or so, she said. I made her tea. She pretended to inspect my bookshelf. She pointed at the notebook on my table, the one with my rules. "What this?" she asked. "Reminders," I said. "Things I tell myself not to do." She smiled. "You already break them." She was right. Weeks turned into months. My morning started with her laughter from the kitchen, her voice humming some Thai pop song while the kettle hissed. She moved through my space like she'd always belonged there, barefoot, effortless, unafraid. I found myself making plans again. Real ones. Maybe I'd renew my visa long term. Maybe we'd rent a bigger place closer to town. Maybe that cafe she talked about wasn't such a far-fetched dream. And every At a time, I reached for my wallet to fix her mother's roof, to cover her rent, to buy her a new phone. I told myself it wasn't about money. It was love. And love, real love, doesn't keep score. At least, that's what I thought. There's a moment, just before you fall completely, when you feel the tilt, that invisible shift from control to surrender. You tell yourself you're safe because you've learned from the past, because you're older, smarter, more cautious. You don't realize that love doesn't need a door to enter, it seeps through the cracks. One night, under the soft hum of ceiling fans and the smell of coconut candles, she whispered, "You good man, I lucky I meet you." And I believed her. Believed her so much that I didn't see how every word that followed, every story, every tear, every promise was slowly leading me somewhere I wouldn't want to go. Because in Thailand, paradise doesn't break your heart all at once. It does it gently, so gently, you almost thank it for the pain. It didn't fall apart suddenly. That's the thing about these stories. They don't explode. They erode. One quiet argument at a time. One little lie that feels too small to matter. It started with the phone. Late night messages, she said, were from friends. Calls she took outside. Pacing barefoot on the porch. Voice low. Careful. The first few times, I ignored it. I wanted to trust her. I told myself I was being paranoid, that love needs space. But space can be a hiding place too. She started staying out later, blaming extra shifts at work. Some mornings, she'd come home smelling of cigarettes she didn't smoke, eyes tired, excuses practiced. I'd ask where she'd been, and she'd smile like I was a child who'd asked why the sky was blue. "Don't worry so much," she'd say. "I'm here now." And somehow, that was enough. For a while, I'd see her scrolling through her phone, turning the screen away when I walked by. The woman who used to hum while she cooked stopped singing. The laughter that filled the house turned into silence that pressed against the wall. Once, I caught her reflection in the mirror while she was texting. Her smile was different, sharper, private. A smile meant for someone else. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain hit the tin roof, wondering when I'd lost her or if I'd ever really had her at all. Then came the emergencies. Her mother's hospital bills, a brother who needed money for papers, a friend who'd been in a motorbike accident. Each story had just enough truth to sound real. And each one came with a request, small at first, then bigger. I told myself I was helping her. That's what love does, right? It gives. It fixes. It forgives. But every time I reached for my wallet, something in me recoiled. A quiet voice I buried under guilt, the one that whispered, "She's using you." I tried to ignore it. I told myself I'd rather be fooled than be cruel. One night, I came home early from town. Her scooter was gone, but her phone was on the table buzzing. Out of habit, or maybe fear, I looked. The message was simple. "He's asleep. I'll come when I can." I didn't scroll further. I didn't have to. The words were enough. I waited outside until dawn, the kind of waiting that eats through hours and pride alike. When she finally pulled up, hair damp with sea air, I didn't shout. I just asked, "Who is he?" She froze. Then tears, instant and practiced. She said he was a cousin, then a friend, then someone who helped her once. The truth flickered behind her eyes like a candle running out of air. "I love you," she said. Don't make me choose. And like a fool, I believed that meant I'd won. But love built on lies doesn't collapse overnight. It rots slowly until one day you reach for it and your hand goes straight through. After that, something in me changed. I started checking the locks twice, counting my money, reading meanings into every silence. She must have felt it, the shift, the suspicion. So she did what she always did when things got too close. She distracted me. That's when she told me about her cousin's cafe, how they just needed a small investment to start something real. Something for our future. Her voice was honey, her eyes soft. She said we'd finally have something that belonged to both of us. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. So I wired the money, enough to buy the illusion of love a few months longer. I didn't know it then, but that transfer was the last real conversation we'd ever have. 2 weeks later, she was gone. No note, no goodbye, no explanation. Just absence, that clean, surgical kind that cuts deeper because it's silent. The house looked the same from the outside, but inside, it was hollow. Her clothes were gone, her toothbrush, her perfume. Even the cheap little Buddha statue she'd insisted on placing by the window gone. She'd left behind only a single hair tie on the bathroom sink, like an echo of what used to be. At first, I told myself there had to be a reason. Maybe her mother was sick again. Maybe she'd gone to sort things out with her cousin. Maybe she'd come back tomorrow, embarrassed but sorry. Tomorrow came and went. So did the one after that. I drove to every place we'd ever gone together, the market, the cafe, the bar where we met. Each time, someone recognized me and shook their head before I even asked. One bartender, the one who'd watched us fall in love night after night, looked at me with a mix of pity and exhaustion. "She gone, my friend," he said quietly. "You not first." The words landed like gravel in my chest. I went to the police station, a desperate foreigner clutching hope like it was evidence. The officer barely looked up from his paperwork. "She your girlfriend?" he asked. I nodded. "She take money?" Another nod. He sighed. "You should go home." That was it. No report, no search, no sympathy. Just an unspoken truth. This story happens every day. I sat outside on the steps of that station for an hour, maybe more. The heat pressed down, flies circling the sweet rot of street food nearby. Everything smelled too alive for how dead I felt inside. I tried calling her number again. Disconnected. Her social media gone. The cousin's cafe never existed. I'd been erased. The days that followed blurred together. I stopped eating. Stopped answering messages from friends back home. Shame has a way of shrinking you. It makes even sunlight feel like judgment. The worst part wasn't losing the money. It was realizing that every "I love you," every tear, every promise had been currency. I wasn't a partner. I was a paycheck with a pulse. I remember sitting on the porch one night, watching the sea drag away the moonlight. My glass was empty, but I didn't bother refilling it. I just stared until the horizon bled into black. That's when I noticed the notebook, the one where I'd written my rules. It was still there on the table, damp from the humidity, pages curled. Rule Hasson, don't fall in love. Rule #2, don't rescue anyone. Rule #3, don't believe in second chances. I laughed until it hurt. Because that's the cruelest trick paradise plays. It lets you write your own warnings, then makes you forget how to read them. When I finally checked my bank balance, I saw the full damage. Almost everything I'd saved gone. My future reduced to digits I could count on one hand. I booked the cheapest flight I could find, weeks away, and started selling what little I owned: the scooter, the TV, the old fan that barely worked. Each sale felt like peeling off a piece of the dream I'd built here. On my last night, I walked down to the beach. The same stretch of sand where we first met. The same waves pretending to be eternal. I tried to remember her laugh, her scent, her voice, but memory has a mercy to it. It blurs the faces that hurt you most. So I stood there barefoot, letting the tide climb my ankles, and whispered to no one in particular, "Maybe you were never real." The ocean didn't answer. It never does. When I landed back home, winter was waiting: gray skies, frozen air, and the kind of silence that makes you hear your own thoughts too clearly. The first few weeks felt unreal. I'd wake up expecting to hear the fan, the birds, the hum of scooters on the road. Instead, it was radiators and traffic and the low ache of regret that never seemed to leave my chest. Friends tried to help. They invited me out, told me I'd get over it, but they didn't understand. You can't get over something that never really existed. You have to learn how to live with the ghost of what you thought was real. I replayed it all in my head 100 times. The bar, the rain, her laughter, the mornings we shared coffee on the porch. Every moment felt like evidence in a case I couldn't close. Was it ever real? Did she care at all? Or was I just another story in her collection, another foreigner who came looking for love and left empty? Sometimes I'd convince myself she had reasons. That maybe she was desperate, trapped, doing what she had to survive. Other times, I'd see her for what she was: a storm that pretended to be sunlight. It took months before I could open my notebook again. The ink had bled from the humidity, but the words were still legible. I read them slowly, like a confession. I added a fourth rule: never confuse kindness for love. I started writing again, not about her, but about what she represented. The part of me that wanted to be needed so badly I couldn't tell when it turned into being used. The part that mistook attention for affection. Thailand taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. Paradise isn't a place. It's a projection. It's what we see when we're desperate to escape ourselves. Because the truth is, I didn't lose everything in Thailand. I lost the illusion that love could save me. And maybe that's worth something. Now, when people talk about moving abroad, chasing sunsets, cheap beer, simple living, I smile and let them dream. I don't warn them anymore. Some lessons you can't teach. You can only live them. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I still catch myself scrolling through old photos. The beach, the market, the faces I met along the way. I can almost smell the salt and hear the rain starting up again in the distance. And for a moment, it's beautiful until I remember how much beauty can cost. Because paradise doesn't give, it trades. And sometimes, the price is everything you thought you could hold on to. In paradise, everything has a price. This was Paradise Traps. Subscribe if you want to hear more of these stories, and keep your guard up for if you ever travel abroad. Good night.